Hello again everyone and welcome back to another video. In this one, we'll be looking at the unfortunate end of an era in downtown Cartersville. From almost 200 years ago, when the Western Atlantic originally laid their tracks through here, through the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis days, the L&N, Seaboard, and eventually CSX, trains blew their horns through town 24 hours a day, 7 days of the week. And unfortunately, in early November 2025, that would all come to an end, as a quiet zone would go into effect on November 3rd. So I made plans to document as many trains as possible on the final days that they would blow their horns through town on Halloween, November 1st, and the final day being November 2nd. But said plan wouldn't be very easy, as I didn't have the entire day every day to go out, and I'd only be able to go out in the middle of the day most of the time, which is the slowest time of the day on the WNA, meaning I'd have to take what I could get. So let's go and look at the last few trains that I was able to document still blowing their horns through downtown. We start out with our first train being northbound Manifest M542 on its way from Waycross to Queensgate Yard in Cincinnati. There had been talks about a quiet zone dating all the way back to early 2021, I believe, but obviously nothing had ever happened until late summer this year when CSX began to quad gate every crossing through town. Then, shortly after, these signs began to show up with the no train horn lettering being plastic wrapped over until November 3rd.
Total axle 540. End of transmission.
I then mosey on up to Jenna for the next train, coming off of the WNA side calling signals as G315, southbound unit grain loads out of Evansville, Indiana for Athens, Georgia. About an hour later, M584 would show up in town, slowing down to let their conductor off and begin their set-off at North Jenna before continuing north to Wauhatchie and eventually Radnor Yard in Nashville. When Cartersville made their own Facebook post about the quiet zone going into effect, many residents actually disagreed with it, stating many different reasons. But one of the main things that I'm concerned about is the safety of people walking across the track, especially at Main Street, as there is countless people that walk across the tracks all day, every day. And even when the trains did blow their horns through town, many people were completely oblivious to it approaching them. And now with the quiet zone in effect, it may be only a matter of time until something very unfortunate happens, as someone may walk right out onto the tracks having no idea how close the train is, and when they look up, it may be too late. But obviously, I hope this never happens, and I just hope people will become more cognizant around the tracks in downtown. 584 would be it for me on this Halloween afternoon, but like I said earlier, I'd be back out the following day, which would turn out to be the slowest day of the 3 in terms of catching things in downtown. Though I did see a few things throughout the day in other places, such as Adairsville and Resaca, but I didn't film them as, like I said earlier, I'm only filming trains for this video that are strictly in downtown Cartersville. So, the only movement that we would see on Saturday, November 1st would be southbound Manifest M543 off of the Etowah sub as they head south for Rice Yard and Waycross. Less than 24 hours later, I'd be back in downtown for the very last day before the quiet zone would go into effect, as less than 12 hours after this recording, the sound of train horns in town would be gone for good. Arriving in town just after 1 p.m. this afternoon, our first train would be northbound Manifest M544 out of Rice Yard and Waycross up to Queensgate Yard in Cincinnati. The 544 and the 543 that we saw yesterday is a new pair to the WNA and Etowah subs, but they've actually already existed once this year during a few months over the summer before being abolished, then being reinstated a few months later in early October. I believe what CSX is doing with these new pairs is trying to shorten the size on 541 and 542 as they've been getting exceedingly long, stretching over 12,000 feet or better sometimes. These 544s and 543s still run the exact same route as 541 and 542, but they don't work the locations that 541 and 542 do. They're a straight shot from Waycross to Cincinnati and vice versa. And with this new pair in place, it gives the Etowah sub a little bit of a boost in traffic, which is pretty nice to see. I'd then walk up to the Church Street overpass pretty much right above where I had set up for M544, now set up for its counterpart M543, who they had met at Bolivar Siding about 15 miles north of here. Now rolling on into town with its 2 GEVOs and a string of mixed freight, M543 heads south for Atlanta and eventually Waycross. Now back down to pretty much my go-to spot in downtown, Cherokee Street, set up for one last train blowing its horn through town, being northbound intermodal I-196, also being a fairly new train to the W&A running between Duval Yard and Jacksonville up to Bedford Park in Chicago, Illinois. As 196 rolls north through town, a part of my childhood would begin to fade into history, as I can recall countless memories of staying at my grandparents' house as a little kid and waking up in the middle of the night to a distant horn blowing through town, and it's a part of my childhood that I'll never be able to experience again, and it's quite sad. But I'm very glad I decided to come out and document the last trains that I could get still blowing their horns through downtown. And before I bring this video to an end, I'd like to show you guys some extra clips, starting off with the train going through town after the no horn zone was put into effect, as well as some other clips that I never uploaded to YouTube of trains in town over the past few years. Exactly a week later, on Sunday, November 9th, I'd be back in town with my buddy Christian, who came up from Florida to do a trip from the 6th through the 9th. And the only train that we would see in downtown Cartersville for the entire weekend would be this southbound manifest M583. And now with the quiet zone being in effect, the train wouldn't blow for any of the crossings except for the engineer giving Christian and I a friendly gesture. I'd like to thank Christian for letting me use this video so I could show it to you guys, as for the entirety of our trip I was using my camera solely for photography. And if you guys want to go check out any of his videos from this trip, he's already posted his first video of us chasing Georgia Northeastern's northbound job from their yard in Marietta up to just north of Canton. And I highly recommend you guys to go and check out that video, as he documents the area very well. And stay on the lookout for his next video of the area, as it should be coming out fairly soon. Now it's time to turn the clock back, to show some of my favorite catches and also videos that I haven't put on YouTube of trains going through downtown Cartersville. Starting off on the morning of February 4th, 2024, as the now abolished southbound Autorack and Intermodal combo train I-141 blasts through town at track speed. Now let's go all the way back to August 30th, 2021, as I'd be set up just below the Church Street overpass for northbound manifest Q648, as they would head north with 5 locomotives in the head end from Rice Yard in Waycross to Clearing Yard just outside of Chicago. Then sometime in September of 2021, we'd catch southbound manifest Q581 with 3 engines in the front and 2 in the middle and 12,000 plus feet of train behind them. Now we're going to go back to over 5 years ago, to the evening of November 2nd, 2020, exactly 5 years before the last day of horns in downtown Cartersville. Some other things that don't exist anymore in downtown are the concrete ties that were still laid through here at this time, being replaced in the summer of 2022, and obviously all of the crossings here in downtown. At this time, the crossings in town hadn't been replaced in decades, most likely being put in the 1970s or 80s if I had to guess, as all of them still had the 8-inch lights and most of them still had mechanical bells. On this memorable cold night, the train that I'd be set up for would be northbound manifest Q542 with 2 YN2 AC 4400s and a DC GEVO at the head end. Now let's jump back up to February 19th, 2024, set up on the Church Street overpass during another one of my trips with my buddy Dakota, as we're set up for southbound I-141 with a YN2 AC 4400 at the head end, and conductor David Weathers, aka the Weatherman, in the cab. Then the next day, on February 20th, Dakota and I would be set up at Main Street for southbound potash train B241 with a Canadian National GEVO and an ex-City Rail GEVO at the head end with 2 more motors mid-train. Then later that same night, we'd come across southbound yard job Y551 blasting off from Jonah Yard to head south with 2 Jeeps and 2 tank cars for industries south of town right at dusk. Now before I bring this video to an end, I'd like to include one more clip from the day prior, February 19th, 2024, set up for one of, if not my favorite catches ever in downtown Cartersville, being southbound loaded company coal train C351, and its leader, CSXT 4719 at the time, being a freshly repainted and rebuilt flared radiator SD70 Mac, which had some internal issues making its motor sound very loud, as you can hear in this clip. Even though the era of horns in downtown Cartersville has come and gone, I'm glad that I have countless videos of trains still blowing their horns through downtown over the years that can now serve as memories for me. On a side note, I do have a new camera on the way for videography, so I hope I can start making videos for you guys more regularly here on YouTube. And I do thank you guys for sticking around as we took a look at the end of an era here in downtown Cartersville. But until next time, this is Georgia Rail Productions saying so long from Cartersville, Georgia along the CSX W&A subdivision.